So Heung-min Son has played his last game for Tottenham. James Maddison has seemingly suffered a knee injury. The extent of it yet is unknown. And Spurs are playing in the UEFA Super Cup next Wednesday. Plenty to talk about from Tottenham 1, Newcastle 1. So Tottenham started their friendly against Newcastle with the following lineup. In goal, Antonin Kinski starting in between the sticks. A back four, Pedro Porro, Christian Romero, Kevin Danso and Ben Davies at left back. Followed by midfield three of Rodrigo Bentancur, Archie Gray playing in midfield, Papsar, and then a front three of Matthias Tell through the middle, Brennan Johnson on the right, and making his final ever appearance for Tottenham, Son Heung-min. Overall, going into this, there's not a lot that you can take away from friendlies, admittedly, but if you look at Newcastle and where they're strong, it's usually the midfield. So I thought that was going to be a really interesting battle, especially with Archie Gray in the midfield. When last season we only really seen him deployed across the back four. But yeah, took the lead 4 minutes in, a Brennan Johnson goal. Papsar, who I think really is going to have a good season. I think this is going to be his best season at Spurs. Pressing high up, winning the ball back, knocking it off to not Son, Johnson. Johnson strike from range and beat Nick Pope. Bit of a deflection on it, but good start overall. And I think generally we were looking quite impressive. Out of possession, particularly getting back in early and getting in compact, which is something we didn't see last season really under Ange Postecoglou or the season before. But yeah, I thought the midfield looked quite strong. Newcastle really were only breaking down our left hand side. Ben Davies, the only fit natural left back we have in the squad at the minute. Be interesting to see if that becomes a priority for Thomas Frank. Obviously, with Destiny Udogie not travelling as part of the Asian tour. Yeah, you've got Jed Spence who can play there, but I think after today, Tottenham's priorities in the transfer market might have changed, but we'll get into that. I thought Johnson was quite good. I was watching it and I was thinking, I've not seen him. He's picked out a few passes, sort of coming inside and hitting them with the left foot, and just balls down the line and in behind where on the counter where I was thinking, okay, this is something that I've not really seen from Brennan Johnson, the Tottenham top, and I got to say, I really didn't mind it at all. He did put Matthias Tell through 17 minutes in, Tell with about 30 or 40 yards of space, and I think he tried to fool Nick Pope with a little shimmy of the hips to think Nick Pope would go down, but I think Pope sort of called his bluff a little bit. I did see on Twitter someone said that it was quite touching of Matisse Tell to recreate the Son miss against Stefan Ortega in his last game. But yeah, Papsar really good. I really like Papsar. I think he's a player which gets a lot of criticism. Sometimes it's not always warranted, and people forget how young he is still. I think he's only 20 or 21. But I think with a manager like Thomas Frank, who really sort of has that coaching nous that I'm not sure. I won't say that Ange Postecoglou didn't have it, but it sort of seems like Thomas Frank is a lot more of a student of the game rather than Ange, who I'd say is a bit more philosophy driven. Second goal, the equaliser, I should say, come on the 41st minute. Harvey Barnes on the counter attack, cutting inside, and then a really nice finishing off the post. Kinski, you could say that he shouldn't be beating it as near post, and I think that's a valid point. That's my initial reaction, but on the replay, it was just such a good finish in off the post. And that brought us to half-time. So at half-time, three changes for Spurs. Jed Spence, Bergvall and Mickey van der Ven coming on for Pedro Porro, Rodrigo Bentancur and Christian Romero. I was quite interested, actually, that Antonin Kinski played the full game, because a lot of these pre-season games that we've seen so far, Vicario and him have been doing halves. Kinski obviously looks a lot more comfortable on the ball, and there's still a lot of pre-season games to go, so that's not necessarily to say that Vicario has been bombed out and is not no longer the first choice keeper. I think Frank's still sort of in that phase where he's trying to see what's best for everyone really. Um, and then, if I'm honest, the second half, in terms of on the pitch action, the second half is a bit of a dull affair. Um, Tellensar come off on the hour mark for Basuma and Richarlison, and then on the hour mark for the last time ever in his career, Son Heung-min left the field as a Tottenham Hotspur player. It's just a really wholesome moment. There's a guard of honour from both teams, and you could see how much of an impact he had, not just on the Tottenham players, but the Newcastle players who play against him twice a season. They really, it's a really nice touch from them to give him a guard of honour, and for him to go out in his home country. I think the quote he produced in his press conference said was that he joined a team in London as a 22-year-old who couldn't speak English and left as a man. He also left as not only a Korean legend, but a Spurs legend, a Europa League winning captain, just a third in the club's history. Then, in terms of other substitutions, Archie Gray, who I thought looked quite solid actually, quite good carrying the ball, which I wasn't really expecting too much of. There was a moment in the first half where he brought the ball about 30 yards, and I think just as the Newcastle players were sort of surrounding him, he had to, just have like a nice little dribble in between the sea of bodies in the box and lay it off for someone. But him and Johnson come off. Thought they both played quite well. Maddison and Odegaard come on 74th. Then Davies come off of Vuskovic on the 80th minute. But then the real talking point was on the 84th minute where Maddison just seemed to go down off the ball. It wasn't a contact injury by all means. And he was down for quite a while, and they weren't really showing who it was or how the injury occurred, because I think the match production, whoever's running Spurs play, the camera operator hadn't really seen what had happened. And then next thing you know, Stretch is coming on, and it looks like it's going to be his knee. So that's really not good news for Spurs, especially with Kulusevski now out on the sidelines for quite a while, and we haven't really received an update on how long that's going to be. So that's a bit of a worry. I spoke earlier in this episode about how Spurs may need to address that left-hand side for another fullback with Ben Davies deputising. But now I think going into the PSG game without Maddison and Kulusevski, I think that's quite worrying, and I think now's the time for Spurs to act and get someone in. I know it's not as simple as that. Mohamed Kudus, he can play through the middle, but I don't think that's his best position. I think on the right hand side he's looked really, really good. So again, are you putting a round peg in a square hole with that one? And obviously Gibbs White's off the table now. So now you've got to think of realistically who's available. Eze to Arsenal's gone a bit quiet. I'd wonder if we'd sweep in there, but I don't think that's very likely. And then you're looking down the list. Bilal El Khanous is a player that I've seen linked at Leicester last year, Moroccan attacking midfielder. I thought he was quite good when he played us. Obviously he scored the winning goal, I think it was, but maybe that was just because our midfield were letting 20, 30 yards of room for people to advance before actually putting a foot in. But yeah, I really don't. Maybe is it Jack Grealish? Is that a short-term solution for Spurs? Maybe a loan for the season. Then there's less pressure for Kulusevski or Maddison to be rushed back. But in terms of where we go next in the transfer market, I don't know. And then just to finish it, finally, just a thank you to Heung-min Son. What a player, what a legend. Recorded a video talking all about Son, and it would do it more justice than I could just in this final parts of this record. But if you have enjoyed, make sure to stick around, and there'll be another episode coming soon for all things Spurs. And until then, at the Spurs.